A new battle over the ballot box is brewing. The Justice Department's demanding 3 counties in California and around a dozen states cough up information about their non-citizen voters. Former DOJ official John Yoo is a law professor at UC Berkeley. He joins me now with what's behind this effort. Good morning, John.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Great, thanks. So what is your assessment of the DOJ going after some of those California counties and some of these other states trying to get that information squared away?
The federal government has a responsibility, as do the states, to make sure that every person who votes has the right to vote, that every person who votes in a federal election is a citizen. And our Constitution gives the frontline responsibility to states to run our elections. But they also have an obligation to make sure that non-citizens are not voting. And if they are engaged in lax policies, or they even engaged in efforts to register people who shouldn't be voting, then the federal government has the responsibility, not just the option, but the responsibility to audit those voter rolls to make sure that only citizens are voting in our elections. And Congress has tried to give the federal government more power to do this by giving it the right, I think, to cut off election funds to states that don't cooperate.
A DOJ source telling Fox News, quote, election integrity starts with clean voter rolls. That's the foundation for secure elections. Is that fair?
I think so. I actually think the thing that's worrisome about the reports I've seen is that there are states and counties that are suggesting they won't cooperate. Why wouldn't they want to cooperate in opening their books and just showing that they have been engaged in good faith with registering only citizens to vote in federal elections? This resistance is part of the broader resistance you're seeing in immigration and other areas and the environment, where state and city officials are trying to flout the valid authority of the federal government to make sure that federal functions like voting are being performed correctly.
All right, next topic, Counselor. Oral arguments began yesterday as several states try to shut down President Trump's birthright citizenship executive order. Earlier this summer, the Supreme Court blocked the use of nationwide injunctions to circumvent the president's plan. Now the appeals court is taking up the issue more directly. How do you see that playing out?
This is the way the Supreme Court wants this issue to go forward. As you said, Mike, the Supreme Court just a few weeks ago said district judges are not allowed to stop the operations of the entire federal government nationwide on immigration, on birthright citizenship. You're going to get, I think, different decisions in lower courts now about whether President Trump's order will survive. I tend to think he's going to lose at the Supreme Court on the merits, but I think there's an open and fair debate about this. President Trump himself is not sure. He said publicly he wasn't sure whether he's going to win on this issue because it calls on the Supreme Court to overrule about 100 years of precedent and even longer of practice. But this is how it should go to the Supreme Court. The courts of appeals should hear this in the regular course, which now is happening in the First Circuit up in New England, which I think will vote against President Trump's order. And then the Supreme Court can immediately intervene and settle this question once and for all.
Does that put the conservative majority at the high court in an awkward spot?
They will have to vote, I think, against President Trump's executive order if they want to stay true to this idea that they've been pressing in lots of other areas, that the Constitution should be interpreted based on the original understanding of its adopters. And this is an amendment, the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, that was adopted back in 1868. I tend to think the conservative majority is not going to toss out over 100, almost 150 years now of precedent and practice, even though President Trump does make good arguments as a policy reason why birthright citizenship is placing pressure on our immigration system.
There's also been the battle between the Trump administration and some of the Ivy League institutions, Brown University striking a $50 million deal with the administration. You have an Ivy League pedigree. Is Harvard next?
I sure hope so. Don't hold Ivy League pedigree against me. Although it is a fair grounds for suspicion, I admit. This is part of the winning streak that the Trump administration is on because higher education has been engaged for decades in what I think has been unconstitutional activity, using race to pick students, using race and engaging in ideological discrimination in the faculty and staff that they hire and promote. Now, I think the important thing is I hope that the Trump administration doesn't just walk away from this issue once they get these large fines. They want to make sure that they don't just punish or sanction universities for their past bad acts, but to figure out how to make sure universities don't go back to their bad old ways in the future.
Are you surprised to see these distinguished universities fold, or is it all about the federal research dollars?
I think the federal government, I think the Trump administration did hit on the right tool, the right lever to try to get universities to reform themselves, which is cutting off federal research funding, which amounts hundreds of millions of dollars for some universities. I'm not surprised the universities decided to give way because so much money was at stake. At the same time, they might think, all we got to do is pay this one-time fine, and then we can go back to doing what we were doing before. So the important thing to make sure that universities don't get away with that is to look to the federal government to keep watching, to keep demanding information, and to keep monitoring how these universities run their admissions programs, how these universities treat and hire faculty.
John Yoo from UC Berkeley, one of the greatest schools in the country. John, thank you much for your time and your analysis today.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.